For nearly 40 years, PIMS has worked behind the scenes of beauty and CPG. Along the way, we've gotten to know the people who make the industry run, the founders, the operators, the ones with the real playbook. This is the PIMS Influence, where they tell you how they actually do it. No fluff. Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. And yes, you're in the right place. My name is Sherry, but I'm actually sitting down with Mike Ryan. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Sherry. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is going to be a really exciting episode. And actually, we're going to talk about something very, I don't know, monumental, right? For you. So, would you like to tell us about this exciting news?
I couldn't think of a better person to help me introduce what we're going to introduce here. After I think I'll be very close to 60 episodes, 60, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, but that's unbelievable in itself. We are shifting things and changing things a little bit, starting with the name of my podcast. Currently, as you know, our podcast is named Minutes with Mike, which we've had, I think this is our fourth year of doing it. But we are switching the name effective immediately to the PIMS Influence.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, 4
Very
years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the name influence. What does that mean to you? How do you define that?
Yeah. So, we thought long and hard about if we're going to switch this, like what kind of message do we want to sort of make sure that our viewers and listeners, which has been growing, knock wood, every month and year as we've been doing this. We want them to know that we're continuing what we've started and that the messaging behind the PIMS influence would stick. And I think with the word influence, it was chosen specifically because, we're certainly in that world of influence and how it's changed as we've evolved ourselves and the podcast has evolved over time, right? Like so influence, when we first started talking about the word influence and when somebody first reached out and said, do we send things to influencers? We were like, influencers, what are that? It was just sort of, people that were in out of the mainstream that were popular that people wanted to sort of attach their products to. Period. The end. The message was this person uses our product, right? Now what it's evolved into is much more, you know, intentionally built around communities and authenticity and products that want to attach their community around messages from people that are talking from the heart, right? And that's what we do. The minutes with Mike, right? It's much more than a PIM sales tool or something that we're just trying to get messaging across. What's our capabilities? How can we work it in this podcast? It's much more than that, and what it has become is much more of a deeper dive into the people that we interview and how they influence the people around them, products, sales, and where they came from and where they're going.
Yeah, you actually seen it all, right? Like the beginning of influencers and how it's evolved right now.
Yeah.
And then actually, I think you have so much to offer in this field because you've seen it all. And you talk a little bit about, kind of the evolution of it. But right now, as being at PIMS, I would say, is it almost 40 years, right?
37 years. I hate to, it's somewhere around 30 years. It went from, as it was coming out of my mouth, sounding cool to now sounding like I always have to apologize sometimes. Like, oh, it's 37 years. Yeah. Seen a lot though, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I think everyone can learn from that as influencers, as creators, as just, leaders of this beauty and wellness industry, and the industry is growing. I mean, what are the things that you actually really wanted to get out there and wanting people to know more about this industry as a whole, this whole entire ecosystem?
You know, I mentioned earlier that we've sort of reinvented ourselves at PIMS many times over the years. And podcast the same, right? So when we first thought of the messaging behind Minutes with Mike, we said, we have clients that sometimes have worked with us for years, decades, but they still come to us and say, I didn't know you guys did this, or I wasn't sure if you guys did that. So what we said was, let's do this. Maybe you can, they're saying this to me, the management team at PIMS, maybe you can interview the folks behind the scenes, right? Give people a peek behind the curtain of what is production, what does receiving do, what is when you say logistics, what does that mean? Well, let's talk about shipping. Like maybe interview the folks that work with PIMS, that lead these teams at PIMS, and get their perspective on what it is they do and how they do it. And things would get answered, like timing and specifics around, paperwork, and all the good stuff that goes behind the scenes that, you know, is a little ho-humish when you talk about during the sales call or when you're first meeting people, but they want to be able to share internally on their end. They have questions about it. They can just tune in and see these episodes. So the first year was built around sort of just creating this glimpse into what it is we do here at PIMS. It was so popular, it was such a hit that our clients were actually saying to us, listen, if you ever decide to do this externally, I'll be a guest. I'd be happy to be a guest. And 5 episodes turned into 10 episodes, into 20, into 60, right? And what I've seen as that progressed is, as the influencer marketing world expanded and the expectations of our clients expanded, the deeper the dive was with these conversations, right? People were sharing not only what it is they do daily at their desk to make sure that these brands are known, but they were sort of looking internal to themselves, whether it be as managers, how they led their team, what mistakes they were making in the past, what they're doing now that's better, what they've learned, or as people, right? You probably wouldn't be surprised because you do it as well. But people, if they feel the trust is there, they'll open up and share sometimes their innermost feelings about what they were scared of and tendencies that they have. You know, One thing that always seems to shock me is the people that lead these companies and these organizations that have so much face time in front of buyers at events and behind microphones and in front of cameras. You wouldn't think they're scared at all to be able to sort of put themselves out there, but truly they are, right? Deep down inside, they have issues of self-confidence. They have issues about what they're talking. It's not as easy as it looks. Even me, today, prepping for this, after 60 episodes and 37 years of doing this sort of thing, I still get scared too, sure.
I mean, I think it's actually really normal to feel a little nerve, but that's also because, you probably have really high expectation for
Yes.
yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and then no shortage of self-confidence, but sometimes you fear, before we came on the air, I was asking Sherry, who my Hollywood lookalike might be, right? Like you want people to perceive you as, the all be all know all person. And that's what these founders sometimes have this little bit of.
Yeah. And just on the record, I think we mentioned Jimmy Kimmel and Nick Offerman. That's
Both
two.
of which
So
I'll
if you
take, yes. Yes.
so if you guys have any other ideas, I think you're welcome
Most
to.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm really curious because like you said, you've talked to so many of these leaders, incredible executives. And what surprised you the most? And after talking to them so much, or what is these common thread that you actually found through these interviews?
Yeah. So, what first pops into my mind is they're very self-aware. Many of them have a long, legacy of history and growth. And they are well aware of whether it was done through, intentional relationships. They know what it is that they do well and don't do well. And they are systematically trying to seek out to better themselves in those areas, right? They know, product and company aside, they know themselves as people, right? They want to give their best to their offering. They want to be able to put themselves out there. They look to better who they are. Even people that have been doing it 30, 40, 50 years are like, I'm not really good at this. So I hire the people that are good at this to plug in. Or when people when I speak about this, I'm not so well at speaking about this. So I make sure I have the proper, they know and are self-aware of the stuff that they aren't good at and they try to get better at it. And consequently, they're also good listeners, right? They don't just sort of drabble on and on. They don't just walk into a room and say, "Hey, people, listen up. Here's what we're going to do, and here's why we're going to do it," and then walk away. They listen to the people they've surrounded themselves with. They listen to, I'll say public opinion, but they listen to issues and concerns around their product, around their companies to make sure that those are all addressed. And they're always learning, right? They're always happy to take advice. They're always learning about what the consumer is looking for. But again, as people themselves, they're always learning what they can do better as managers, as founders, whether it's a startup or a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They want to be able to do it the best they can. To do that, you have to be not only curious, but you have to listen to what people are saying. Not just hear them, but listen. And I find that's a common thread in these folks.
Wow. That is so powerful. I mean, you're speaking my language. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. And actually, do you find any difference when it comes to talking to these incredible leaders in wellness and beauty industry and with other kind of industry as well? Like, is there any difference?
Good question. And I would think when I first started doing this, there was going to be a difference, right? Like if I'm talking to somebody who's a consumer brand versus a beauty brand, there's going to be a difference. If I'm talking to somebody who's been doing it 30 years versus they just came out of school, there's going to be a difference. There's going to be a difference if the person has different aspects that led up to this. But
Mm,
again, what I found is the common core on these people or these folks that join me on the podcast is they all have this sort of built-in personality trait, and that trait gives them all those things that I just previously talked about. That curiosity, right? Broad self-awareness, that leadership ability that's born from making mistakes, learning from the mistakes, right? Making maybe what they thought was a career-ending mistake and learning from that mistake, leaving a job that paid well. They've been there for years. They've done well, but you know, trying to better themselves by either launching their own product or business or taking another job of a company that is far behind the one that they just left, but they wanted to sort of help reinvent themselves. This is kind of at the core of the folks we talk to. They have that sort of the term always learning, but they always are trying to reinvent themselves too. Like we have at PIMS, right? Or I have doing this podcast. What I was on day one, on episode one, let me share this story with you. Episode one was a friend. I was telling her we're going to have her on. Thought of having the podcast. I immediately thought of her. She is London based, so I had to do it like off hours. And I was in a panic attack, right? Like the night before, I had like cheat sheets on the ground. I was pacing back and forth in my house, reading notes, trying to memorize bullets in my brain. And then that day, I had taped up like all these cheat sheets all around my computer. I was in a panic. I was sweating. If you watched episode one, go back and watch episode one, or maybe I'll tag it on this, but you'll laugh. She is fabulous and she's great. And at times she's almost trying to calm me down. But I was kind of lost. I was trying to, here's what a podcast should be and here's how we should do it. And this is the steps you got to take. And what I learned is over time, readapting myself, listening to folks talk to me and give me advice or the curiosity of me trying to pick that out of them was, you know, whether it's the guest or the host, being yourself, answering genuinely right from the heart is what it's all about. And I think I learned that when pre-interview, I always send sort of a guide, not a question sheet, but like a guide, like here's what we're going to talk about. Here's the direction I'm going to take the conversation. Let me know what you think. And the ones that write back and say, it's all fine. I'm an open book. Ask away. Are the ones that I know are exactly what I'm saying. And it's 95% of them are I'm fine. Whatever you want to ask me, you ask me and I'll answer from the heart. And they do. And that kind of frees, and you can agree, maybe disagree with me. It kind of frees you up as a host a little bit because you can sort of come up with questions on the fly a little bit, hear their genuine answers, and respond in kind, right? Versus, and then I wanted to ask you on July 3rd, they come across kind of like icky and yucky. And I saw that sort of maybe episode 8, 10, 12. I sort of got into a little bit of a groove. Now, up around the 60s, I think I'm an expert. I'm sure 60 episodes from now, when we read through this, you'll ask me questions and I'll tell you what I've learned since then.
Again, I really appreciate what you shared because I absolutely love that. And I think, like you said, it's like a lot of the leaders and guests that you interview is that genuine curiosity and actually having active listening skills. So, right, it's something that you just kind of developed and you kind of fall in love just to be curious, because that's what it's how it creates a really, really organic conversation with people. And that's always the best. Hmm.
And it's like anything else, like even in a relationship, right? Like you have to, it's not all about you. It's not all about me. It's being able to listen to what the person's saying to you. I always think I come away from an episode learning something about certainly the products that these folks offer, but the people themselves, right? And then the next time I see them at an event, it's funny how we react because like I feel like some of these people I've met a week or two before we do the podcast. Some of them I've known for years, but I feel like we're at another level in our relationship, right? I see them at an event, you immediately go over to them. You know, you talk from the heart. You've talked about family, you've talked about relationships, you've talked about their job, and you feel like they've shared something. You know, it's broadcast for the world to listen to, but that one-on-one connection takes you to a different level. And that's what I love about doing the podcast, right? It's not always easy. In fact, it's very difficult sometimes. Fitting it into your schedule is tough sometimes, but it, it checks the box of it builds a relationship beyond, a sales call, beyond a handshake at an event, beyond a lunch or having a drink with somebody. You're actually asking questions, getting answers, and sharing. And I think that's, kind of what separates why I do it and why I kind of dig doing it.
Yeah. It's almost like you're skipping the small talk
Yeah,
altogether. You're
yeah,
just getting to
yeah,
the core, right?
yeah. And also like you don't have to like load it up with like this is going to be the moment. I'm going to spring this out and they're going to say this. It sort of unwinds and you hear something, you ask another question about it, they respond, they ask you. Sometimes they're asking me questions and I'm answering. So it's self-developing and it really separates what is a client and what a potential client or a client, and they become a
Mm.
friend.
And I'm really curious because, after being a host for this many years, and do you take any of these skills into your, personal life? Like, does it make you a better partner? Like, do you,
Yeah,
maybe this is something I could ask your wife.
I think it does. It's I think if there was a negative to Mike Ryan, there was, certainly, I'm coming up on 60 years old and kind of setting my ways a little bit. And I think one of my negatives was prior to having the experience of actually interviewing and speaking to people, I always thought I knew what listening was. If you're talking to a client or potential client, you look for certain things, you listen for certain things, and you react upon them. But in this world, it's a little bit different, right? Now you're talking to people about their livelihoods. Now you're talking to people about their lives, sometimes their children, their spouses, you know, everybody that supports them in their business, partners. Sometimes they think favorably upon those partners, sometimes they don't, right? But being able to listen and feel their intention, I think has made me a better listener, right? Springs over to my personal life, whether it's I have 4 children, whether it's with my kids who aren't such kids anymore, but as they grow and age and now their kid problems turn into adult problems, being able to listen to that and give them advice because that's what they're looking for. Like, what would you do? Did you ever go through this type thing? Being able to not miss the signs that when they give to me that I can, I hear what they're saying. Let me say this type thing. I think it's helped me be better at that for sure. Absolutely. Good way.
I mean, I love that. I love the answer. And you mentioned signs, and I know we did not prep this part at all. But I'm really curious because do you look for any specific like change in facial expression or changing tone, like signs like that, or anything that I don't know, any tips that you can offer to us?
Yeah, body. Two things pop into my head again. First, body language is super important, right? Like when I'm training or talking to new salespeople at work, we teach them body language, right? Because whether it's your awareness of what people intend on this conversation, you can read a lot by head movements, people looking around while they're talking. Every little thing that's done leads to the conversation, adds to the conversation. that is not only true in business, but in life as well, right? You can just read people across the room. In my relationship with my wife, I'm the one that can't stop talking, and she's a little bit more reserved and quiet. She's our cerebral one, but I see her at parties sometimes when we're getting together with folks, and I'll see her across the room, and I could tell her struggle signs with conversation. Not that she doesn't want to be in it, but that she's finding it hard to have this conversation, and that I'll go over and join her and be like, blah, blah, blah. That for sure. And then there's verbal cues too. Like you can hear people, in business if they're pushing back on, timing or price or, things supporting the business, what they want to see, what they want to hear. You want to be able to listen to that. Same with, my personal relationships. It's not always glowing and fantastic. Sometimes you have to work at it. And in doing that, you need to the open mind to sometimes what you don't do well, right? Clients and potential clients will say, like, okay, so you said it was going to take you a week and it was going to cost X amount of dollars. We really need it in 3 days and we need it to be X amount of dollars. You need to listen to that. And on the personal end of things or dealing with people on a podcast, you're open to their suggestions, you're open to their feedback to make you better. Again, being self aware, self awareness.
Mm, yeah. I mean, okay, as a fan of the show, I mean, I'm just gonna put a request in, like, this is what I wanted to hear going forward. This can just be an episode on its own because this is absolute gold.
This is what the PIMS influence will dive much deeper into. And you know what else is worth mentioning too? So one of the other things we wanted to be able to do with this podcast is I am surrounded and supported by such great leaders here at PIMS, whether it's Ayla Anaya, our president, or David Silberglad, our CEO, or a bunch of other folks around here. They've watched this thing grow, and what was at beginning stages were very, you go do that. You'll be great at that. You go do that. I'll watch it from afar. That has been encouraging now that they have been so connected to it that they say to me every once in a while, yeah, I don't mind. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I host an episode, or if I find somebody great, maybe I'll host an episode. So part of the intention with the PIMS influence is to give other people an opportunity, not just Mike in the minutes with Mike, but to have others sort of guest stars host an episode or two. And that gives them an opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's so exciting, and I cannot wait for, so many different format or different topics. And obviously, I want to continue to hear about all these different verbal cues and body language that make someone a really good, self-aware leaders, because that's really what we need. And it's missing, I think, in a lot of the industry these days. So yeah, I'm so excited. I mean, what are you most excited about this change?
I think I was nervous at first with the change, right? Because when we first were sort of rumbling the idea, I was like, what does this mean? Like, it's my show. This has my name on it, right? And I was kind of like, how, maybe, I don't know, why would we want to do it, right? And then when you start looking at the different reasons why, and the connections from other people that want to be more involved, there's a lot of people behind the scenes, you included, that help make this as wonderful as it is. And you want to be able to give them a voice. You want to be able to give them the opportunity to make changes as they think it will make the show better, or give feedback as to, you interviewed such and such and it was great, but you did ask this question. And when they gave you their answer, I don't know if you heard what they said, but they said this. Those type things are only going to add to the flavor of the show, right? Up as we surround ourselves around episode 60, I'm looking at number 100 already. Like, how are we going to make this even better, right? And now with the PIMS influence, I think it's sort of an open book, right? There's a lot of different opportunities open to us in doing that, whether it's plugging in again that guest host, or just maybe changing up the conversation points or the people we speak to. Right now, they've been really supported around business opportunities and the folks in our field that either do business with us or are going to do business with us. Maybe we open that up to, important people in our lives, or we open that up to people that have made differences, mentors that are not in our space, but have helped guide us to the people that we are today. Like, nobody wants to hear a podcast with me and my mother, but that 85-year-old woman put a lot of the juice in the squeeze, right? Like, she's the one who was like, you should feel good about saying this and talk about this. And, don't not think about going there, go there. And, go knock on that door. That woman who, changed our, probably everybody could say that about their mom, changed their lives.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't get the recognition. That's a bad word, recognition. Maybe they don't get the feedback. You know, my mother, I'm gonna have to tell her to watch us. They'll cry when she hears that part that I just shared with us. Like, this is what changes. You know, somebody in your
Yeah.
life made you who you are,
Mhm.
for better or for worse. Me as well. But those pluses don't come easy. And whether it's parenting or a sibling or a spouse or a good friend, these are the people that make you who you are. So including them in on it too.
I just wanted to say, it's been such a privilege to just listen to the episode, be one of the fans of Minutes with Mike. And now I honestly cannot wait for more. The PIMS Influence, it's a brand new chapter. I'm really excited, and I'm sure everyone's super excited as well. So, yeah, I guess the logo behind you, that's going to change.
There's going to be a change of signage that's in the preparation stages right now. So that's definitely going to go up. And this one I'll find a spot in my home. I have a home bar that we call the Rye Inn. So I have a spot on the wall somewhere. It'll be a conversation starter. I'll put it up.
Oh, that's amazing. And thank you so much today and sharing this news with us. And what's coming next is going to be the first episode of the PIMS Influence.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.